The discovery, the unexpected find markers. Chen wiped the sweat from his brow as the mining laser finally cut through the last layer of asteroid rock. Kepler 7 mining station had been his home for 3 years now, orbiting the resource-rich asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The work was hard, the pay was decent, and the isolation suited him just fine after his messy divorce back on Earth. He preferred the company of machines and space rocks to dealing with people and their complicated emotions. The excavation chamber, filled with dust as the rock face crumbled away, revealing something that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. Instead of the usual iron ore or rare earth minerals, his headlamp illuminated something that definitely didn't belong in a random space rock. A crystalline structure, roughly the size of a football, pulsed with an inner blue light that seemed to respond to his presence. "Control, this is Chen in Sector 7. Marcus spoke into his unit, never taking his eyes off the strange object. "I've got something unusual down here." Static crackled back at him. The mining tunnels played hell with communications, especially this deep in the asteroid's core. Marcus stepped closer to the crystal, noting how its surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal frozen mid-pour. Geometric patterns covered its surface, too precise to be natural, too alien to be human-made. His engineering mind catalogued the impossibilities. The crystal was generating its own light source without any visible power input. The temperature readings on his suit showed it was exactly room temperature, despite being buried in frozen rock for who knew how long. Most disturbing of all, the patterns on its surface seemed to be moving, rearranging themselves as he watched. Marcus had spent his entire career dealing with the practical and the measurable, or compositions, structural integrity, mechanical systems that followed predictable rules. This thing defied every rule he knew, yet something about it called to him, not with sound but with a feeling he couldn't quite describe, like recognition, though he'd never seen anything remotely similar. The first touch against every safety protocol drilled into him during mining training. Marcus reached out with his gloved hand. The moment his fingers made contact with the crystal surface, the world exploded into sensation. The blue light intensified, and Marcus felt a jolt of energy race up his arm and into his brain. Not painful, exactly, but overwhelming in its intensity. Images flooded his mind. Star systems he'd never seen, alien landscapes under foreign suns, and creatures that moved with purposes he couldn't fathom. Through it all, a presence touched his consciousness, vast and ancient and utterly alien. It spoke without words, communicated through direct transfer of meaning that bypassed language entirely. Seeker, found. Evaluation begins. Marcus tried to pull his hand away, but found he couldn't move. The crystal had begun to change, its solid surface becoming fluid, flowing up his arm like living mercury. His environmental suit's alarms went crazy as the substance somehow passed through the sealed material without breaching it. The blue glow spread up his arm, under his skin, following his nervous system like luminous veins. Do not resist. Integration must be complete for proper assessment. What are you? Marcus managed to gasp out loud, though he suspected the entity could hear his thoughts directly. Catalyst, tool of the architects, seeker of the worthy. The crystal finished its integration, settling into Marcus's nervous system like it had always belonged there. He could feel it now, a presence at the back of his mind, observing, cataloguing, judging. His vision sharpened dramatically, showing him details in the rock walls he'd never noticed before. He could sense the electrical systems throughout the mining station above him, each circuit and power flow as clear as if he had blueprints overlaid on his vision. Changes begin. Marcus stumbled back to the lift platform, his mind reeling from the encounter. The catalyst, as it called itself, remained quiet in his thoughts, but he could feel it there like a second consciousness riding alongside his own. The trip back to the main station felt both endless and instantaneous. Time seemed to flow differently. Now, some moments stretching while others compressed. The mining station's corridors looked different through his enhanced perception. He could see the stress points in the hull plating, the inefficiencies in the lighting systems, even the electromagnetic signatures of his fellow miners going about their duties. Everything had gained an extra layer of information that his brain somehow understood despite never learning it. "Chen, there you are," called out Jennifer Walsh, the station's chief engineer. She was a practical woman in her 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a nonsense ponytail and the kind of steady competence that made her invaluable in deep space operations. "Control's been trying to reach you for the past 2 hours. Your comm went dead." Marcus checked his chronometer and felt a chill. He'd thought he was down in the excavation chamber for maybe 30 minutes. 2 hours of missing time wasn't something he could easily explain, especially not without mentioning the impossible crystal that was now somehow part of him. "Sorry, equipment malfunction in the deep tunnels. I found something strange down there, though might want to send a survey team." Jennifer frowned, studying his face. "You look pale. Everything okay? Maybe you should report to medical." "I'm fine," Marcus said quickly, though he wasn't sure that was true. "Just tired. I'll file my report and get some rest." As he walked toward his quarters, Marcus became aware that the catalyst was observing everything through his senses. It seemed particularly interested in the station's technology, though for what purpose he couldn't guess. Every piece of equipment he passed, from environmental controls to communication arrays, seemed to register in the alien consciousness as significant somehow. Unwanted attention over the next few days. Marcus tried to maintain his normal routine while coming to terms with his new situation. The catalyst remained largely silent, though he occasionally caught fragments of its thoughts. It was studying humanity through him, learning about their technology, their social structures, their way of thinking. The attention felt invasive, but also oddly respectful, like a scientist observing a fascinating new species. His enhanced abilities continued to develop. He could now predict equipment failures before they happened, seeing the cascade of stress and where that would lead to breakdowns. His reaction time had improved dramatically, and he found himself able to multitask in ways that should have been impossible. Most disturbing of all, he was beginning to pick up emotional impressions from the people around him. A kind of limited telepathy that made social interactions incredibly awkward. The changes didn't go unnoticed. Station Chief Morrison, a by-the-book administrator who'd never worked a day in actual mining, called Marcus into his office on the 4th day after the discovery. "Chen, we need to talk," Morrison said, his thin face pinched with suspicion. "Your productivity reports are off the charts this week. 40% above your previous best numbers, with 0 equipment malfunctions on your shifts. That's statistically impossible." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in the plastic chair across from Morrison's desk. The man's emotional state was easy to read now, a mixture of suspicion and excitement that made Marcus's skin crawl. "I've been focused lately. Sometimes you hit a good streak. A good streak doesn't explain how you somehow avoided the power grid failure in Sector 7 yesterday. Everyone else in that area had to evacuate, but you'd already moved your equipment before the cascade started. How did you know?" The honest answer was that the catalyst had sensed the instability in the electrical systems and warned him. Marcus couldn't exactly share that information. Lucky guess. I noticed some irregularities in the power readings. Morrison's eyes narrowed. I've reviewed the logs, Chen. There were no irregularities until 30 seconds before the failure. No way you could have predicted it through normal means. Marcus felt the catalyst stir in his mind, and for a moment he sensed its assessment of Morrison. The alien consciousness found the station chief lacking in some fundamental way, dismissing him as unworthy of consideration. The casual dismissal of another human being bothered Marcus more than he wanted to admit. I don't know what you want me to say, Chief. I got lucky, maybe. But corporate's been asking questions about unusual activity out here. Energy signatures that don't match our equipment. Unexplained improvements in efficiency ratings. They're sending an inspection team next week. Marcus's blood ran cold. Corporate meant scientists, security personnel, and questions he couldn't answer without revealing the catalyst's existence. He had no idea what they might do to him if they discovered an alien intelligence had taken up residence in his nervous system. Visions of the past that night, alone in his quarters, Marcus finally tried to communicate directly with the catalyst. He sat cross-legged on his narrow bunk and focused his thoughts inward, seeking the alien presence that had become part of him. Why me? He asked silently. What do you want? The answer came not in words, but in images. Marcus found himself experiencing visions of cosmic history, seeing events that had taken place millions of years ago. A galaxy-spanning civilization called the Architects, beings of pure energy who had seeded the universe with tools like the catalyst. Their purpose was to find and evaluate younger species, determining which ones might be worthy of joining a greater galactic community. But something had gone wrong. A parasitic race called the Devourers had emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, consuming entire civilizations and leaving nothing but empty systems in their wake. The Architects had fought them for eons before finally sacrificing themselves to create a barrier that held the Devourers back. That barrier was failing now, after millions of years. The Devourers were stirring again, and the catalysts had been activated to find species capable of standing against them. Humanity was one of the candidates being evaluated, but they weren't the first. Dozens of other species had already been tested and found wanting. What happened to them? Marcus asked, though he feared the answer. Images of dead worlds filled his mind. Species that had been too aggressive, too passive, too rigid in their thinking, or too quick to surrender their individuality for power. The catalyst had tried to help them, but each had failed the ultimate test in their own way. You are different, the catalyst communicated. Your species shows promise, but the evaluation is not complete. The true test comes when the Devourers arrive. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's recycled air. They're coming here. Soon, this system was chosen deliberately. If humanity proves worthy, you will join the Galactic Alliance and help defend against the Devourers. If not, The vision that followed showed Marcus what happened to species that failed the test. The Devourers didn't just kill their victims, they consumed their life force, their memories, their very essence. Entire civilizations became nothing, more than fuel for the parasite's endless hunger. Marcus spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, processing the enormity of what he'd learned. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, and somehow he'd been chosen as the instrument of their evaluation. The weight of billions of lives rested on his shoulders, and he had no idea if he was up to the challenge. The test preparing for war. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and dread. The catalyst had begun sharing more of its knowledge with Marcus, downloading information directly into his brain through methods he couldn't begin to understand. He learned about energy manipulation, quantum field theory, and technologies that humanity wouldn't develop for centuries. The knowledge came with a price, though. Each data transfer left him exhausted and disoriented, his human brain struggling to process concepts that required entirely different ways of thinking. Marcus also began experiencing what the catalyst called tactical precognition, brief glimpses of possible futures that helped him anticipate and avoid problems. It wasn't true prophecy, more like an enhanced ability to calculate probable outcomes based on current conditions. Still, it was enough to make him increasingly valuable to the mining operation, and increasingly suspicious to his colleagues. Jennifer Walsh cornered him in the equipment bay while he was performing maintenance on the excavation gear. Her usual practical demeanor had been replaced by barely contained worry. "Marcus, what's really going on with you?" she asked, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "The past week you've been like a different person. You're predicting equipment failures that shouldn't be predictable, working twice as fast as anyone else, and yesterday I swear I saw you react to something before it actually happened." Marcus paused in his work, feeling the weight of her concern. Through his enhanced senses, he could detect her emotional state, fear mixed with genuine care for his well-being. Jennifer had always been kind to him, treating him like a younger brother despite being only a few years older. The thought of what might happen to her when the Devourers arrived made his stomach clench. "If I told you something incredible was about to happen, something that would change everything, would you believe me?" he asked carefully. Jennifer studied his face, noting the new intensity in his eyes, the way he seemed to be listening to something she couldn't hear. "Try me." Marcus made a decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. "We need to talk privately, not here, not anywhere with security monitors. Can you meet me in maintenance shaft C7 after your shift?" The truth revealed 3 hours later. Jennifer followed Marcus through the cramped maintenance tunnels that ran between the station's outer hull and inner living spaces. The area was one of the few places on Kepler 7 not covered by surveillance equipment. Originally designed for emergency repairs during asteroid impacts, Marcus had spent the time since their conversation wrestling with how much to reveal. The catalyst had been surprisingly supportive of including Jennifer in their preparations, though its reasons remained unclear. According to the alien consciousness, she possessed qualities that would be valuable in the coming conflict. This better be good, Marcus, Jennifer said as they reached a wider section near the station's main power coupling. "I've got reports to file and a sleep cycle to catch up on." Marcus took a deep breath and extended his hand. Blue light began to emanate from his palm, coalescing into complex geometric patterns that cast shifting shadows on the tunnel walls. Jennifer stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. "Alien technology," Marcus said simply. "I found it in the asteroid excavation 6 days ago. It's called a catalyst, and it's been preparing humanity for a test we don't even know we're taking." For the next hour, Marcus explained everything. The visions, the abilities, the coming threat of the Devourers, and humanity's chance to join a galactic community if they proved themselves worthy. Jennifer listened with the same focused attention she brought to complex engineering problems. asking practical questions and absorbing the incredible information with remarkable composure. So you're saying we're about to be invaded by space monsters, and you've been chosen as humanity's champion by an alien artifact that's living in your brain. She summarized when he finished. That's the simplified version, yes. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, studying the patterns of light still dancing around Marcus's fingers. Show me something else. Something that proves this isn't an elaborate hallucination or psychological break. Marcus nodded and focused his enhanced senses on the station's power systems. Through the catalyst's perception, he could see the flow of electricity through every circuit, every backup system, every piece of equipment connected to the grid. He reached out with his new abilities and began making adjustments, optimizing power, distribution, and eliminating inefficiencies that had plagued the station for months. Throughout Kepler-7, lights brightened, environmental systems hummed more smoothly, and the persistent vibration from the main reactors settled into a steadier rhythm. In the computer center, efficiency readings spiked across the board as systems that had been running at 70% capacity suddenly jumped to near-perfect performance. How did you do that? Jennifer asked, staring at her tablet as station-wide improvements registered across all systems. The catalyst understands technology in ways we can't imagine. It's been studying our equipment and learning how to optimize it. But that's not the important part, Jennifer. The Devourers will be here soon, and when they arrive, everything we've built, everyone we care about, will be at risk unless we prove ourselves worthy of survival. Corporate complications, asterisk. Their conversation was interrupted by the blare of the station's general alarm. Both Marcus and Jennifer rushed back to the main corridors, where they found chaos erupting throughout Kepler-7. A corporate inspection ship had arrived 3 days ahead of schedule, demanding immediate access to all station records and personnel files. Marcus felt the catalyst stir uneasily in his mind as they made their way to the docking bay. The alien consciousness seemed to recognize something about the new arrivals, though it didn't share its concerns directly. Through the station's security cameras, Marcus watched as a team of black uniformed personnel disembarked from the sleek corporate vessel. The leader was a tall woman with silver hair and cold blue eyes, wearing the kind of expensive business suit that cost more than most miners made in a year. Her security detail moved with military precision, scanning the area with equipment Marcus didn't recognize. More disturbing was the fact that some of their devices seemed to be tracking energy signatures that definitely weren't standard corporate technology. Dr. Sarah Chen, Station Chief Morrison, announced over the intercom, his voice tight with nervous excitement. Senior Vice President of Xenarchaeology Division, here to investigate reported anomalies in our operational efficiency. Marcus felt his blood turned to ice. Xenarchaeology Division meant they were specifically looking for alien artifacts. Someone had reported the energy signatures, and now corporate knew there was something extraterrestrial on Kepler-7. They cannot be allowed to interfere. The catalyst communicated urgently. The evaluation must proceed uncompromised. What happens if they capture you? Marcus asked silently. Images flashed through his mind of corporate laboratories, alien technology dissected and studied, and the catalyst's consciousness trapped in analytical equipment while humanity faced the Devourers without preparation. The visions were followed by something even worse, the possibility that corporate might try to use the catalyst's power for their own ends, turning humanity's test into a competition for profit and control. The hunt begins. Dr. Chen wasted no time in beginning her investigation. Within hours of arrival, her team had set up sophisticated scanning equipment throughout the station and begun interrogating personnel about any unusual occurrences. Marcus watched from the shadows as they questioned Jennifer, noting how the engineer deflected their questions without technically lying. The Catalyst's abilities allowed Marcus to monitor the corporate team's communications, and what he learned filled him with dread. They weren't just looking for alien artifacts. They were preparing to weaponize whatever they found. Dr. Chen's real mission was to secure extraterrestrial technology for military applications, turning humanity's first contact into an opportunity for warfare rather than cooperation. This is why so many species failed the test, the Catalyst explained sadly. They allow fear and greed to override wisdom. They seek to possess rather than cooperate. Marcus realized that the corporate investigation was itself part of the test. How humanity responded to the discovery of alien technology would determine whether they were ready for galactic citizenship or destined for extinction. If they approached the Catalyst with violence and exploitation in mind, they would prove themselves unworthy of survival. The thought sparked an idea. Marcus made his way to Jennifer's quarters, using his enhanced abilities to avoid the corporate security patrols. He found her poring over technical manuals, trying to understand the improvements he'd made to the station's systems. "They're not just here for the artifact," he told her without preamble. "They want to turn it into a weapon. The Catalyst says that's one of the ways species typically fail their evaluation." Jennifer looked up from her tablet, her face grim. "I figured as much. Dr. Chen's people aren't just scientists. Half of them are military contractors. Whatever you've got living in your head, they want to dissect it and figure out how to build more. We can't let that happen, not just for the Catalyst's sake, but for all of humanity. If we prove we're just another aggressive species looking to exploit alien technology, the test is over. The Devourers will find us defenseless. So what do? It's not like we can fight corporate directly. They've got legal authority and enough firepower to turn this station into scrap metal." Marcus felt the Catalyst pulse with something that might have been approval. "We don't fight them. We prove that humanity is better than they are. We show that some of us can choose cooperation over exploitation, even when it costs us." Their conversation was cut short by an emergency klaxon that Marcus had never heard before. Throughout the station, automated systems began sealing blast doors and activating defensive protocols. In the command center, terrified voices reported impossible readings on the long-range sensors. Marcus and Jennifer raced to the observation deck, joining a crowd of miners and corporate personnel staring out at the asteroid field. What they saw defied comprehension. The space around Kepler-7 was filled with ships, if they could be called ships. They looked more like living creatures, organic curves and pulsing surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with predatory grace, surrounding the mining station like sharks circling wounded prey. "What are those things?" someone whispered in the crowd. Marcus felt the Catalyst's recognition and dread. "Devourers, the test begins." Now, Dr. Chen's voice cut through the panic over the station's communication system. "All personnel remain calm. These appear to be previously unknown alien vessels. We're attempting to establish communication." The response came not as radio signals, but as a direct assault on the minds of everyone aboard Kepler-7. Marcus felt the psychic attack wash over him, a wave of despair and hunger that sought to paralyze its victims with terror. Around him, people collapsed or began screaming as the Devourer's mental influence took hold. But the Catalyst protected Marcus from the worst of it. and he found himself able to think clearly while chaos erupted around him. Through his enhanced perception, he could see what the Devourers were really doing. They weren't trying to communicate, they were feeding. The psychic attack was draining the life force from everyone on the station, harvesting their energy to fuel the parasite's endless hunger. "Now you understand," the catalyst communicated urgently. "This is what awaits all species that fail the test. The Devourers consume not just life, but hope itself." Marcus looked around at his fellow humans, watching as corporate security personnel and simple miners alike struggled against the psychic assault. Some were fighting back, trying to help their companions resist the mental influence. Others had withdrawn into themselves, paralyzed by fear or already succumbing to the Devourer's drain. The choice Dr. Chun's voice crackled over the intercom. Again, but now it carried a different tone. "Mr. Chen, we know you're the source of the energy signatures we detected. Report to the command center immediately. That's an order." Marcus felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. He could surrender himself to corporate, let them study the catalyst and try to weaponize it against the Devourers. It might even work in the short term, though the alien consciousness assured him it would ultimately fail. Species that approached galactic citizenship through violence rather than wisdom never lasted long against the threats that awaited them in deep space. Or he could trust in the catalyst's evaluation of humanity, believing that his species had the potential for something greater than fear-driven aggression. "The choice is yours," the catalyst communicated. "I can make you more powerful than any weapon they could devise. Full integration would grant you abilities beyond your current understanding, but the price is your humanity itself." Marcus looked at Jennifer, who was helping an injured miner resist the Devourer's psychic assault. She met his eyes and nodded, understanding passing between them without words. She trusted him to make the right decision, not just for them, but for all of humanity. "No," Marcus said aloud, addressing both Dr. Chen's demand and the catalyst's offer. "I won't let you turn me into a weapon, and I won't stop being human to gain power." Around him, something remarkable began to happen. The humans who were still conscious started working together, sharing their strength and helping each other resist the Devourer's influence. Corporate personnel and miners forgot their differences, united by the common threat. Dr. Chen herself abandoned her mission to secure alien technology, instead coordinating rescue efforts for those who had collapsed under the psychic assault. Marcus felt the catalyst pulse with something that might have been pride. "This is why your species was chosen for evaluation. You have the capacity for cooperation even in the face of extinction. Victory through unity, drawing on the catalyst's power while maintaining his human identity." Marcus began to coordinate the station's defense. He used his enhanced abilities to strengthen the mental barriers of those around him, sharing the alien technology's protection without forcing integration on anyone. Jennifer worked with him to optimize the station's systems, turning mining equipment into makeshift weapons and using the facility's industrial infrastructure to create defensive measures the Devourers hadn't anticipated. Asterisk. The battle wasn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. Instead, humanity's refusal to surrender their essential nature, while embracing cooperation with alien intelligence, proved to be exactly what the test was designed to measure. The Devourers, creatures of pure consumption and individual hunger, found themselves unable to understand or counter a species that chose unity over dominance. As the parasitic ships retreated into the dark spaces between stars, Marcus felt the catalyst's consciousness begin to change. The alien intelligence was no longer just observing humanity. It was learning from them, discovering new ways to approach the eternal struggle against the forces of consumption and despair. Your species has passed the evaluation, the catalyst, communicated with something approaching wonder. You will be welcomed into the Galactic Alliance as equals, not subjects. And I have learned something new about the nature of worthiness. Dr. Chen approached Marcus as the immediate crisis, past her corporate authority seemingly forgotten in the face of what they'd all witnessed. What happens now? She asked simply. Marcus looked out at the stars, feeling the vast network of civilizations that awaited humanity's participation. The catalyst would remain with him, not as a master or a tool, but as a partner in the great work of defending life against the forces that sought to consume it. Now we learn, he said, and we teach others what it means to be human among the stars. The test was over, but humanity's real journey was just beginning. Asterisk.